So this chapter was probably the better of the readings that I found around how to write it, because there's different ways, but that outlay is the core classic structure of any dissertation. Okay, you must have a title page. I mean, the number of dissertations that were submitted previously without a title page, it's just clear abstract. Then you can have your acknowledgements as you need it. Table of contents, any abbreviations that you're using, and then the classic, your introduction, which is like your ethics proposal. Why are you doing this project? Literature review, your methodology, results, your analysis, conclusion, appendices, and bibliography. So that is the classic structure of any research project. That's how you just follow that. It's a formula, and that's what people are looking for in their dissertation, in the marking or review. That's what they're looking for. And here they've got some nice detail around how to set out and structure bits and pieces. And whilst they're not essential, it's the first impressions as well that happen here around your title page. That immediately sets the tone of what this project, do you know what you're doing or not doing? Okay. So as they're saying, what is your title? Does it tell you? So it's not your research question. It's an overall descriptive title, i.e. your topic title, if you can put it in. So a person reading will go, oh, that's something I want to have a look at, or not. And then the standard layout is your title, your name. You can put your name on it because it's not that anonymous in terms of the marking. I've been supervising it, and you also need it, so you've got it for yourself down the line. There is this submitted impartial fulfillment of. You can put that in if you want. That's generally what is done. Put your student number on. Yeah, get your student number as well at that point if you want. But yeah, man, you might want to print a copy and have it bound for yourself. Because down the line, somebody might ask for a copy of your dissertation. So always keep an electronic copy, because seeing as it is electronic these days. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Now, the abstract is the one thing that people get wrong. They write it almost like an introduction when it's not. So look at journal papers for abstract examples. Yeah, they do them properly in there, but they are these main elements. A statement of the main question or problem. Why are you doing the research? What is it? How did you do it? What are the results? What are the conclusions? Generally between 250 and 300 words in length. No more than A4. So you're looking at half an A4, if that. It's literally a paragraph. This project is focusing on the role of homework in counseling, with a particular focus on CBT. I don't know whether that's part of it. Structured questionnaires were sent to registered counsellors based on X, Y, and Z. The results show that homework is used frequently but badly introduced. In conclusion, homework aids counselling, but it needs a more clearly structured, formatted approach to presenting it to clients. Okay. Yeah, there's an abstract. Okay. That kind of thing. It's just literally, if you had to take each of your main sections, your introduction, your literature review, if you had to summarize your literature review in one sentence or two sentences, how you approach it. A semi-structured, unstructured interview was used, a online questionnaire, just a brief description. A little more in terms of the results. There were 325 responses out of 500 or whatever it might be. Yeah, you give a little more detail and a brief conclusion. It's not a discussion. It's the conclusion that you come to. Acknowledgement is for whoever you want to acknowledge. Invariably in there, it's there are sort of traditions that are followed, but there's no absolute structure. Yeah, it's normally you acknowledge family, friends, your supervisor, anybody who's paid for it, or, you know. So normally it starts with those who play the most important role without the general support of XYZ Foundation. Who funded it? In other words, who gave you the most support, etc. Where else did you come? And then those who had to put up with it. Okay, table of contents, important. Okay. Please make sure you do have one. Frequently they're not in there. So make sure you're using the heading function in Word to be able to get your table of contents. You all okay with the heading functions? No. Okay. So we can re-look at that. You want to have a quick look at that? Okay. So within Word, there is the heading function. Okay, these are the headings, functions. So when you put in an item, it gives it, it's no use merely going like this and enlarging it to be a heading, okay, which is what you're probably doing. Okay, when you have a heading and you go and you make sure that it's a heading, you then put something in and you now have a subsection, and within that you might have yet another subsection of that heading. You see it's gone to 3 now. Okay, when you come to put in your table of contents, it is under references, table of contents, and it does that for you. So the numbering in the headings is referring to the level of indentation. So that's heading 1, that's heading 1, that's heading 2, that's heading 3. Now if I were back to a new section, that would become a heading 1. Okay, so that's heading 1, heading 1, heading 1. The numbering in here is not the number of heading. It's the point at which the heading appears in the indentation point.
So would heading 1 be that literature review, and then subheading would be first?
Yes. Yes. And if you have a subheading under that heading, it will be heading 3. You shouldn't go beyond heading 3 for most things. There's no real need for that. And when you go back to the next point under literature review, it will become a heading 2. And so you go to a broad new section. Heading 1 you could also call your chapter headings. Is heading 1. Okay? But as you can see, this one which you've just enlarged doesn't appear there. It has to be, because this is a mini macro, it's picking up that formatting. Okay, and the other way to ensure you know what you're doing is call it 1, heading 2, yeah, heading 3, and that will become 3.1. for okay, that shouldn't be 3, that should be 2 and 2 point. Let's change that. Sorry, I got that wrong. So that was 2.1, and then that would become 2.1.1. If you, because it's a subheading under here. This is heading 2, this is heading 3. You could have 2.1.1, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.3.1. It's just the level of indent that you're working to. Is that clearer? Does that make... So you can either use the heading functions without the numbering, but the numbering just helps the reader understand where each... Because when you're reading a big piece of work, numbering systems help track. You can link back to, okay, this is part of this section still. Otherwise you're paging backwards and forth saying, hang on, where I'm a bit low.
Does that contents tool pick up on the pages?
Yes, automatically, yes. Yeah, so once you can just go update table, you can update entire table or numbers only. And it will give the accurate page numbering throughout.
Because on the article it says that your title page is page 1.
But you don't put a number in.
And the second page is page 2. So would that work? How would that work? Does this will be on page
1. Well, this is a page 1, so let's insert. Got it too high. Not going to work like that. So page numbering is page layout. Where's page numbers again? God, it's really hard trying to work on the side point of view. So when you also wanting to change things on pages, if you have to go and change a page from portrait to landscape, so if you've got a set of tables that aren't fitting in your portrait page, okay, over here you can go to this point forward, you can go landscape. So you've got portrait, landscape, and then you go back to that. Okay, you can go and then it will change it back to. Sometimes it takes a bit of playing out. It's about getting your cursor in the right place for it. Okay, so you're able to switch between your elements. Insert page numbers. So you can format it, continue from previous, start at page 2. Okay. So let's insert top of page. Okay. So there. Let's reformat that. Insert. Start at. So that's starting that page as page 2. So do make sure you have numbers in. It really, it's not a train smash if you have page 1 on your title page. You can't get rid of that. But there is a way where you start the page numbering from. Gotcha. So play around with getting that in terms of your page numbering. Those are mine, but do have page numbers, because I've had dissertations without page numbers. Do make sure you have page numbers. Table of contents. Your acronyms, particularly for more common ones or ones that you're using that might be unknown. So we know up front what they all mean. So, your introduction is, why do you want to do this? What motivated you to do this?
If what motivated you was personal experiences, you can't mention either.
Always write it in the third person. You can still mention personal experiences, but write it in an academic style. So the moment you write I, put down the researcher, if you need to do that. Or you can still, from personal experience, but without putting I in at all. Based on personal experience, the following factors were identified as needing further clarification. So always try and put it into the third person, because this is an academic piece of work, not a reflective journal. I is appropriate in a reflective journal, but not in your dissertation. Hiya.
Hello.
So why do you want to do it? How you intend the research question you intend to address. Okay. A brief description of how you intend to approach it, but this is a preface to the main methodology. So you don't discuss the research. This will approach from a qualitative point of view using a semi-structured interview. Well, yeah, you can say this will be discussed in further detail in the methodology section. Yeah. So it's really about why you're doing this, how you intend to approach it, what's motivated you, what are some of the factors involved. It's like your ethics proposal in that sense. You know, it's what brought you to your rationale for doing this. And include in it, if you can, how this will aid or help counseling, or how does this contribute to counseling in any shape or form. So it gives that link. So your literature review is important. Putting it together, familiarizing yourselves. Basically, it's saying what is out there, what's been done previously. Okay. But literature reviews are written in particular ways. It's similar to an essay in that sense, but there are different ways. You can either group texts according to similarity of ideas and arguments, group studies in terms of similar phenomenon, comment on the main ideas, compare and contrast elements, and which articles, which form the basis to your thing. So think about how you're wanting to structure it. Most comprehensive literature reviews tend to do them on a thematic basis. What are the key elements in this area? So what have you come across? Some ideas for yours. What kind of themes? These would be all your heading twos, for one way of calling them, under your literature review.
Well, because mine's based on people leaving university, they normally tend to blame external factors rather than internal factors.
Right. Okay, so that's one heading. Internal versus external factors will be a theme. Financial pressures will be a theme. Stress management, time management will be a theme. And you then group the readings based on those ideas? What are the different previous researches? So you might have one piece of research reading that forms, as I said, that's your spinal reading. That's forming core across everything you're doing. And that will appear in every section just about. But then you'll have other adding in readings that fill in the body around that section. So some might only just literally, where you've literally read the abstract, and that's fine. You can still use it. You know, Jones 2010 found students' time management was poor. You don't have to read any more than that. That's why most of your journal readings need to be abstracts only. And using those are your peripheral infills. Those are the ones where that person are all saying more or less the same thing. So you have 3 or 4 people as a single citation in your citation bracket, rather than just your single citations. Try and bulk form of calling it more than one citation in a bracket to add emphasis. In previous research, these people have all found this. That adds weight to your discussion. If you just have the same single author, it's a bit on the weak side. Okay? It needs to be adding in, and that's where your extra journal readings, where you picked up, however tenuous it might be sometimes, if they've covered something and they're saying something similar in that area, put them in. That's how you get your 800 references. You don't have to have read them in detail always, but you need to pick up on the key ideas that are being used. So sometimes a contrasting elements can be done, and again, what will best suit the style you use, what will best suit your project, your topic. Most people it seems, but sometimes a straight chronological element can work. Yeah, Beck's did this in 1950, these did these in the 60s, we built on this, particularly if you're building on previous research rather than discussing topics. If there's a build on research, then I think a chronological analysis sometimes works better, because then you can say, so based on all of this done previously, this is what's proposed. One of the elements that they're saying here, and this is the difference, you'll be referring to numerous authors and viewpoints in literature. You'll need to find ways of introducing and critiquing these pieces of work. Okay. Can you see the difference between that style versus that style? Peters discovered that. It was discovered by Peters. One is active, one is passive. And you need to be consistent in your style of writing. Don't mix the two up. Most people tend to do the active voice, which is more academic. But yeah, you can mix them up, but generally try and keep it. That's the preferred style, because you're using Peter's discussion in that element. So methodology. So look at the lecture on literature review that I've done previously, and that will also again give you some feedback on it. So your methodology, this is the first point where the weighting in the grading comes into play. Your literature review is almost like a given for you guys at this point. You need to have it because it forms the bulk. It's an important part of it, but it's like writing an essay. We know you can do that. And that's where most of you, most dissertations we've marked in the past, they up to this point they're doing fine. Then it all falls apart. Okay? Because the methodology isn't structured and discussed in any clear way. And it's important to put forward your research design, the overall approach first, and then the method you particularly used. So methodology is the general approach taken, while methods is the specific element you used. So you need to have that general approach discussed first. Okay. So you present your methodology and rationale accurately and completely and concisely as possible. You also mentioned those tools you considered but did not employ, and give reasons why you decided to not use them in this particular situation. I.e., your methodology, this introduction section, is why you chose your particular approach. It's using research theory to argue why you ended up doing what you did. You have to present an argument or a rationale of your approach. Yeah. Or why you chose to exclude that as an approach. So, you chose to interview rather than a structured questionnaire because. So it's about that arguing, because you can take numerous ways of getting your information, but you need to argue why you chose your route to get the information. And that's it was expedient and time efficient unless it's relevant. Okay? That's not a good enough reason. The reason must be based on what your research question is about. Always link it to the research question indicates or clearly says this is the kind of information I need, and this is best discovered by an interview, structured questionnaire, whatever, rather than the alternatives. And then you find some supporting literature around that. MacLeod argues that semi-structured interviews are best used to discuss experiential events with people, whereas volumes of data are best used, according to Jones, 2013, using structured questionnaires. You know, something like that. That kind of argument is what you're trying to put down. Again, they're discussing here, quantitative, qualitative, why you chose qualitative. So this is around any general stuff which you would have considered anyhow. You may want to answer some of these in your write-up. How would you answer some of these in your methodology description? If you had to answer some of them, would any of these questions be useful? The answer to these questions be useful in your description? So, your methodology should contain the following: statement of the broad nature of the data you're seeking to obtain. Hence, that's why I always ask, what would the answer to your question look like? What kind of data is it? Descriptive numbers, experiences, stories. A description and explanation of your choice. A description of how, when, and where you obtain your data. A rationale for the choice of methods and your rejection of others. Methods employed for analyzing data along with your rationale. So that's part of your methodology. So you're saying, this is my overall approach. This is my method. These are my participants. These are how they were selected. So your sampling processes. But also within that, the data will be analyzed using grounded theory, thematic analysis, constant comparison approach, and base it in the literature. Pull out the readings that, and the following approach of MacLeod will be used, and describe that approach. So the reader knows up front that you intend to use constant comparison method, or grounded theory, or descriptive analysis. Okay? And we'll be checking, have you followed that approach? Indication of any shortcomings or problems encountered, and how did you resolve them? And any ethical considerations and how these were dealt with. Okay, so they might not be in that order, but all of these elements need to be present in your methodology. I think this is one of the few clear, comprehensive sections around what's required in a methodology.
And how many words would you suggest then?
1,000. It's about, is it comprehensive enough? It's difficult to put a word count on it because some methods maybe require more description than others. It's not a lengthy section because then people get bored. But it needs to be comprehensive enough to be able to, for the reader to know, you know what you're doing, you've got clear orientation in terms of your approach, you've considered the ethical elements, you've worked out a practical method of gathering your data, and you've followed that. You've got a clearly structured method of analyzing your data once you've got it. Okay? It's really about asking, well, how are you going to do your project, and why are you doing it that way? You can answer that question in succinct form. Comprehensive, but succinct. There's not an argument and discussion about research theory. You're not writing an essay on research theory here, which is what one person did. Okay? You're putting an argument for why you're using your approach. So any reference to tools such as questionnaires are in the appendices section, so you don't include those in your methodology. So you see appendices 3, 4, interview questions, questionnaire, whatever. Okay, so results data. This depends on your project, whether you have a results section or results and discussion. So you can have results, discussion as separate sections, or you can have results and discussion depending on your approach. Sometimes they have to go together, like grounded theory, where it's difficult to separate the two out, and your discussion is constantly being linked together to the literature review. And for most qualitative elements, that tends to be the approach, particularly with thematic analysis. You tend to have a results stroke discussion. Otherwise, it's difficult. They found this, and then you're having a discussion, but you keep having to refer back to and including the results in your discussion, so you might as well have them together, because they go naturally together. As long as they go naturally together, then it would flow. So, as I say here, when you have results in discussion, is where the results are likely to raise immediate questions and concerns, and can be more dealt with in the immediate presentation rather than in the next section where they feel more dislocated. Okay. So if there's a jarring when you're trying to read your discussion section and you constantly have to go back up to the results section to make sense of it, then mix them together. But if it's clear figures and graphs and whatever, that's clearly a result section. Qualitative tend to have a result section followed by discussion. For you guys doing the analysis, you might put those themes in your tables. The results we found were the following, and put in some of those tables or refer to them in the appendices if they're bigger. These are the main themes, these are the main codings, this is, and then go on to a results stroke discussion as appropriate. So think of how you want to present your data. Okay, particularly if you have statistical data, graphs, pie charts are appropriate, and use them. Export them from an Excel spreadsheet into your Word document would be appropriate. I don't think any of you have got that. And then make sure if you do have figures that you name them. So that we know what you're referring to in your tables and charts. So, you know, a table like that, you do need to have what it is. And look at your language when you're referring to any charts or tables. Again, these are examples of how to think about them and use them as a discussion point. They become a way of arguing your point of view. So when you have got pie chart, it needs to have a coding system on it if you do use a pie chart. So figure that out in Excel. Don't try and do a pie chart in Word because it won't happen. You can only export, you do it in Excel, and when you right click you can look at the options for what you're wanting in here. Now the problem with most, as you can see here, shades of grey become meaningless. So if you are doing it, it does need to have the color. Once something is translated into grey, it's like, what's the difference between that one and that one? So which one's Brazil and which one's
50%
yeah. Same with bar charts. They need to be appropriate, and they must inform. There's no use just putting in data and they don't inform the discussion. They need to be relevant. Otherwise, why are you putting them in? You need to ask, is this adding to my discussion, or is this merely a distraction? How does this relate? Is this necessary? Do I need this? And if you put in you find, and you do some charts, but you actually can say this is meaningless, don't bother using it. If it doesn't add to, don't use them. So it's when you can provide a visual description quickly and succinctly for the reader. I can look at that and see, oh, okay, where we are or not on that. And this discusses 1,000 words just by looking at it. Yeah, there you go. Okay, as you can see from this graph that there has been a slow increase in the number of working class who have attended higher education, but it still does not match middle class in any shape or form. And without having to read the words of that in any shape or form. So it's about exploring what is the appropriate graphs if you're using them for your element. Don't put graphs in for graph's sake if they don't contribute. Exercises.
statistics, is that it graphs
the statistics and figures are appropriate. But if you're, with your guys' stuff, it's so small. Putting in a chart when you've got 5 women, 3 men, it's meaningless to put in a pie chart. Yeah. So your analysis discussion section becomes important because this is where your voice is being written. You are now writing from original point of view. Because you're now taking what you've found and you're making sense of them and explaining what they are. Okay, so we don't have hypotheses for making them. Okay, and this is one of the biggest issues. And students tend to claim too strongly their results. Prove that. Okay? That is not the kind of language you ever use in any research project. Okay? Because there is no such thing as absolute truth anymore, as we're aware, particularly in qualitative work. It's an argument. Okay? It suggests that. It can be argued that. This can be taken as limited evidence for. One might argue on the basis of this that. These findings are ambiguous but may indicate that. Okay? There's no absolute, we have discovered the truth. Avoid that because it doesn't exist. Okay? And you don't have to prove your hypothesis if you've got one. Simple as that. Doesn't mean you failed. Acknowledge the limitations. So what are the kind of limitations? Small sample size, restricted area, who did not respond? Why did they not respond? Might be an element you want to include. Are there people absent by their significant by their absence in your study, who you thought would have been part of it but didn't take part? Or that you haven't actually included but need to be included, manager, in your project, how would management view high-risk clients compared to the counselors? That's a project in and of itself. Okay. And then your conclusion is a way of drawing this together. So you've created your discussion, you formed an argument, you referred back to your literature in your discussion section. And that's how you're doing what you're doing. You're creating an argument based on what previous literature has said, what you found, what does this mean? That's what your discussion is. Okay? You're taking what was found previously, what you found, and you're trying to make sense of what you found in relation to the literature and what's been out there. But your conclusion is, now you're bringing this together. So, what are the inferences? How has this contributed? Future research are the 3 broad elements in your conclusion. No new information should appear in a conclusion. Okay? You don't bring in a new reading or a new finding or a new discussion point. If you find yourself doing that, you're still arguing, you're still in discussion. Include it into your discussion area. Here you're trying to tie the bow on your project. And if you can't tie the bow, then it doesn't need to be in that section. Because too frequently people bring in their conclusion, a new argument point of view. Wrong place. This is about structuring, and that's where my comment would be poor structuring.
Future research, how would you kind of link that in with the,
What emerges first naturally? Where would this research lead you on to? What would you want to investigate next? What are linked researches to this topic that could be explored? So this research has indicated a group-based project working with peer recovering as therapists is an effective way of treating addictions. Future research in this field needs to expand this to a larger number of projects and roll it out to see whether this is consistent across all areas. Could non-recovering addicts do the same work? Professionals, people who weren't alcoholics or whatever, A comparison between this and this might be needed, or so whatever naturally appears. What's also come out of the literature, what have other people done, what needs to be picked up on again. Avoid unnecessary digressions. Do not introduce new arguments. Keep a conclusion concise and to the point. Okay? Present them in a logical order. Make sure they relate back to your research question. And that's the important point here. Your conclusion is the answer to your research question. And so somewhere along the line, the research question proposed in this project was X, the answer is Y. Type idea in very simple terms. Or that whilst the question proposed was this, we have not been able to get a clear answer, but the following indicate the key elements around this question. Then, of course, your bibliography. Must be there in the right format. So either Harvard or APA, people. Whichever one you want to use, whatever you're most comfortable with, as long as your citations and bibliography are consistent. I don't care which one you've used. It's about getting the attention to detail right here. Okay? That your different elements are, like a chapter in a book, organization as an author, it's a BACP. So it's just making sure you're following, and if you use a referencing tool, that should do it for you. Okay, the biggest difficulty these days are electronic sources. You do need to have those two elements in it, which is the HTTP, the web address, and the date it was accessed on. And you could put accessed on, and that's the date you use. If there's no date to the actual piece of work, you use that as your reference date. Okay. People get electronic sources wrong, but we are using more and more of them. Now, where you don't use this is if you're getting a journal article of EBSCO. You don't then go EBSCO, because it's a journal article. You're putting it in as a journal article. It's when you're using a web page. Okay, so books on Dawson, books on EBSCO, you reference it as a book or as a journal, not as a e-book journal element. That's just making your life far too complicated and unnecessarily so, because they exist in real print form. Just put it as a journal. You don't need to tell me you've got it off EBSCO. It's there. We know it's a journal. It exists as a journal. It can be accessed. This is when you are using NHS Choices recommends CBT for depression. That's not printed anywhere. It's only a web page. That's when you would use electronic sources. Okay, these need to be a minimum, and not Joe Bloggs' website, unless you're using Joe Bloggs as an example for something. Okay. Every publication listed in the bibliography should have been cited in your thesis. So if it's in your bibliography, where have you used it? If you've used it, it must be in your bibliography. Okay, both elements must be there. If you've got the citation, it must be in your bibliography. If you've got it in your bibliography, show me where you used it. And I do check. Okay. I begin checking as I go through the document, and if there's consistency, then I let it go. But if I begin finding, hang on, some are missing, I then check every single source. And that's 10% gone. And your appendices, please make sure you name them clearly and correctly. So within your body of work, you name them, but then within that area of appendices, make sure you are clear. Appendices 1 as a heading for that piece. If you need to, you put it in the header of your piece of work. If it's going to muck up the formatting or whatever, just put it in the header. And that will appear across every page. And don't do that. You need to just make sure you put it at the top of the page. Appendice 1, participant information sheet and consent form. Appendices 2, structured questionnaire, interview questions, whatever. Appendices 3, tables. So name them as well. Don't just have appendice 1, 2, 3. So appendice 1, what is it? So it becomes easier. And use the heading formatting for your appendices as well. So because appendix 1, because then they will appear. I've split this whole thing up. In the end bits. And you can just have them as heading 1, maybe heading 2, because if you want them indented, see what formatting you want of that. But then they will appear at the end. You can see here the page numbers have all changed automatically as you change things around. So decide where you want your page numbers, top or bottom, stylistic element for yourself. So does that help clarify a bit on writing and the structuring of So that's why I was lucky to find this chapter. I was looking, trying to find, because I haven't found. And so far this is the clearest, neatest description of how to structure your dissertation as a project as a whole. Yep. There is the stuff on the side. That's the one I emailed you. So on the bottom, this comes from EBSCO. So it's Neil Murray and Geraldine Hughes, Writing Up Your University Assignments and Research Projects, a Practical Handbook, 2008, McGraw-Hill. So it's when I get them off EBSCO, EBSCO, when you email them to yourself, this is what it gives you, these details, so you don't lose them. Okay, so that's a very useful way, particularly chapters out of a book. You've got it all there. You don't have to go writing on where did I get this chapter from. It's in there. With journal articles, all the information is on the journal article anyhow. So that's not a train smash. But in terms of a chapter out of a book, if you use that, all the information from EBSCO, when you email yourself, it gives it to you on the bottom and the publication details on the side. So, the errors that I've seen in previous dissertations: no title page, poorly structured abstract, no table of contents, no list of acronyms and abbreviations. Very few actually people have put those in. Introduction generally there, literature generally there. Badly written methodologies. Most people got a succinct and rather broad, this is a qualitative study, I did the following. Not good enough. Okay, you need to have a broad methodology and your method within that. Inadequate presentation of results, too simplistic or superficially analyzed invariably. The analysis stroke discussion, too brief. Most students have left their work too late and are rushing, and so they can't get a detailed description and discussion. Conclusion tends to be over-exaggerating the importance of the project. This proved that. Bibliographies, most people are tending to get them right, but with numerous errors in formatting. It's attention to detail. They might have all the right elements, but they've got different styles. Some are underlined, some are in bold, some are capitalized. Please be consistent. Okay. Any questions? Reflections? Panic? Does that fit for your project? Are you all clearer? Could you see your project fitting into those? No. Follow the formula. Follow the formula. That's what it is. It's not an essay in that sense. It's different sections. What Amy was saying, how do you link these different sections? Okay, some aren't linked. They're straightforward. That's the abstract. That's it. You don't say anything more. Yeah. If you put your chapters, use those heading sections. Put them in. Put these in so you know you haven't missed one. And as you can see in the numbering here, 6.1, 6.2, 6.3. You don't need to number the title page and abstract, but again, the use of this numbering is what makes the difference. So 6.1, 6.2. You know exactly where you are in a long piece of document. Particularly when you're going into more than one element. So he's stuck there, like here, 6.7.1. Okay. No, well, he's at points. This is chapter 6.7. So yours would be just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This would be whatever, 3.1. Yeah. So he's obviously got 3.2. So you know, as I'm reading, I still know this is under that section. Literature review, 6.7. And that's how the numbering system helps you manage. And then these would be all heading 2s. Okay, using the heading function, that's a heading 1, that's a heading 2, that's a heading 2. Heading 2, heading 2, heading 3. See, it's changed. I now know that that is under that section. So that's a heading 2, that's a heading 3. And sometimes you might only have one element in that. And then we're back to heading 1, heading 2. And that's how you get them. You can if you know how to use the numbering functions properly, make that so that when you're using these functions, the numbering becomes automatic as well. But generally I find a manual element is probably easier. Okay. Good luck. Okay, so in the next few weeks, I'm not sure what more to discuss apart from, I mean, I've identified things in the program around writing things up in a little more detail, where we can look at some of these elements in more detail. But I really want to leave the space and time available for supervision. Okay, I'm going to try and fix up the bloody thing because it's not working properly. But I'm also making the most of Tuesday available for dissertation supervision. Tuesdays is the whole day. I'll be available for the most part for dissertation supervision. So I'll put up a new function. Jonathan's got something that is an add-in to be able to book longer slots. Okay. But most of you should be analyzing your data at this point, and then and writing it up. Ideally, your literature review, introduction and literature review and methodology should be broadly written. Okay. Don't go and try and polishing it up too much, as James was asking earlier. Focus on getting the project finished, because then you've got the thing as a whole to begin manipulating and working with, and you can see it in its wholeness, rather than at the moment the wood for the trees you can't see, because you're only focusing on each individual wood piece of section. By getting it all done, you'll have an overview of it and begin to get a feel of your project as a whole. And this is a process of going over and over and over until you're saturated with your dissertation. Only then does your discussion be rich. Because only by having looked at your data, really analysed it, read through your literature review. So once you've got your data and you've analysed it, edit your literature review. Look for any new material that might have appeared. Do a quick EBSCO search again. Add that in as needed. Because by doing that, you'll get your literature review refreshed. Then you can relook at your discussion and write that. So once you've got your analysis done and broad areas, my suggestion is to review your literature, tidy it up, make sure it's functioning, so you've again got that information afresh, and then write your discussion section. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what you found. There you say both of them are on. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine, because that's what's drawing it out. Your research questions that you ask the participants is not your. These are your action questions, not your research question. Yeah. Your operationalized questions. Yes, it's fine. So it's confirming something. What does that mean? That the answer to this and this question is the same. There's a discussion point. If it's now emerging, yes, now something's emerging, and you can use that. Okay, anything else? It does not record. I don't think it's recorded. Because I should be able to stop this now. Okay. Oh well. Gotta get used to it. Did not record, sorry. Let's figure out how to get that to work. It works fine for the presentation, but unfortunately, I thought thought I had it on because I said record the screen. Haven't done it. Got to figure out. No. Yeah, it's fine. It's useful when it's linked to the reading. But it's fairly straightforward. Go through that reading, the useful one, to help you think through it and structure it through. Is that it? Oh, here we go. It's